So there are two ways we could use helium. Number one, we could buy or rent a tank from a store like Walmart. I'll include a link right here for your convenience. Or we could bring it to a local party store to have them fill it for you. Another thing to note if you bring it to a local party store to fill up is to think about transportation. Because once it's inflated, it gets pretty gigantic. You need to make sure there's no sharp edges inside your car and there's enough space for you to transport back. So there's no surprises when you bring it. General tips. Number one, we can only inflate with helium no more than 2 hours before the party starts. That's because we want to make sure the helium stays inside the balloon securely and that everything will flow. Number two is that to inflate it at 34 inches and stop there, because we want to make sure to avoid accidental popping if it gets overinflated, or if it gets underinflated, we don't want the balloon to sink without enough helium. Number three, the thing to note about is that if the sunlight is really strong, there are some cases that you might see through the balloon. But in most cases, in this kind of room lighting, daylight, the balloon stays opaque. So if there's really strong sunlight, no worries, don't panic, we've got you sorted. So all you have to do is keep the helium balloon outside for 10 minutes, and the balloon will start to oxidize and it will become opaque again. If it's under very strong sunlight outdoors, it could have a slim chance that it is a little bit see-through. But don't worry, once it is in the air outside for 10 minutes, it will start to oxidize and it will become more of a velvety color and it will become opaque. So just make sure you test it out before you present this to the mommy and daddy to be. So few things we need to get ready is obviously the balloon. As you can see, you have to choose black or gold. For the gold balloon, you'll see that there's a black balloon inside. Don't worry, just leave it as it is, because the black balloon is to keep the gold balloon opaque once we fill it up. And obviously choose the right color of the confetti and have the elastic band ready, because we want to tie it up easily later, and a measuring tape, as well as the tassel tail. So this tassel garland, to save time, I've made it beforehand in advance. We'll use it later as a tail to tie it up to the balloon later to look like this. To learn how to do this quickly and easily, check out the video later so you can do this in a few minutes. So we need to make sure that we stop the balloon inflating at 34 inches. How do we do that? Two ways. Number one is to pull up two chairs back to back and measure that space in between the chairs to be 34 inches. And as we inflate it, just make sure the balloon fills the space and then we stop. The second way to do that is to find someone to help you out to measure it as we go. So once it hits 34 inches, the longest side, we measure the longest side of the balloon, which is here. And once it hits 34 inches, we stop right there. So without further ado, let's start. First step is to insert the confetti pack. So in this case, let's pretend it's a girl. The key to inserting confetti pieces is that you pick up bit by bit, don't be greedy, and do a little bit like this. Because of this wide neck opening of the balloon we've designed, it's really easy to just fill it in. You don't have to do it too many times, and it's really easy to do this mess-free. Once you put it in, just make sure you shake it a little bit for the confetti pieces to end up in the bulb of the balloon. So once we've finished that, without further ado, let's start with a helium tank. The next step is to inflate it with helium. So here, assuming that you have a tank at home and you wanted to do it yourself, we just have to stick the balloon neck as far as possible into the nozzle. And because of this extra wide opening, what we have to do is just hold it very tightly, zip it here, and wrap it around the nozzle tightly, and to keep it that way, so that no air comes out as we fill in the helium. And once we turn the valve of the helium tank, we can start filling it with the helium. What we need to do is just press it gently and it will fill in the helium. And once you suspect it's almost the size, find someone to help you measure the longest side if it's up to 34 inches. If it is, then we stop right there. In this case, what measure this is, so I'll stop right here. Make sure when you pull the balloon out that you keep the balloon neck very, very tightly secured. And don't let any helium out as you pull it out. So here we have it. It's already trying to pull me up and away. We have the rubber band here. So what we do is, after we twist the balloon mouth for a few times, just tie it like we normally would, like a hair tie. Best way is to put the balloon in between you and a wall. That way you'll secure it the best as you're doing this. But for demonstration's sake, I'm doing this in front of the camera, so I'm holding it like this. Normally, some people might suggest you to tie it with your hand, but after many different trials, it would create sore fingers, so we have created this solution. So this would be my last loop. So there we have it. So now that we have finished filling the giant 36-inch balloon with the helium, or you have brought it back from a local party store, final step left to do is to attach the tassel tail to it to make it look extra pretty. So what we do is, I've pre-made this tassel. All we have to do is create a loop to tie it to the end of the balloon mouth. Oops, it's trying to pull me up. And there we have it. Tassel tail giant balloon ready to be popped. The final step to this is just to prepare a safety pin, 2 of them for the new mommy and daddy to be. And remember, only inflate this big balloon no more than 2 hours before the party with helium, because we want to make sure this thing floats when the party starts. And only use the exact amount of confetti that we provided for you, because it has been measured precisely to make this float. And get your cameras ready and get popping. 3, 2, 1, here we go!